Do you believe in a God that tells you lies, or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that brings you down? Do you believe in a God that wears the ground? Do you believe in a God that makes you bow, or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that satisfies? Do you believe in a God that opens eyes? Do you believe in a God that tells you lies, or do you believe in me? Do you believe in a God that brings you down? Do you believe in a God that wears the ground? Do you believe in a God that makes you bow, or do you believe in me?
It's Beyond Common Sense. It's Lanny Sense with Lanny Swerglo, KCAA's resident gay, woke, liberal, pot-smoking, race-mixing, tree-hugging, left-handed, science-affirming, Jewish, humanist, atheist, a white evangelical Christian nationalist, worst nightmare. And here's that worst nightmare today, welcoming you to Lanny Sense. Here it is on the third day of June. We're rapidly approaching summer, and it's going to be an interesting summer. We're going to see just how hot it's going to be. But we've got a hot show for you tonight. Here in the virtual studio with me is our resident curmudgeon, Sam Clowder, and our resident filmographer, documentarian, Gregory Franklin. Guys, thank you for joining me here in the studio. Hey, and you could also join us in the studio by calling in on our phone lines at 909 383 1000, 909 383 1000. You have any comments, got questions, want to join us, give us a call anytime during the show, 909 383 1000. Well, this last weekend, I attended the California Democratic Party's annual state convention. It was held in Anaheim at the Anaheim Convention Center. I am a delegate. I'm a state delegate, so I can vote in the elections and everything that was going on there. The major reason I was down there, though, is because Brownie Mary Democrats were going to be holding a meeting at the convention. We hold a general meeting there, but this year we were there to release the first draft of the amendments that we want to see introduced to change Proposition 64. 64, of course, was passed in 2016, which the voters approved by an overwhelming 57%. That's a pretty high percentage in the elections nowadays. And to legalize cannabis, not just for medical purposes, but for recreational adult use purposes as well. Unfortunately, it isn't all it was cracked up to be. But then again, it never was meant to be all it was cracked up to be. 64 was written to pass, not to be legalization nirvana. It did very successfully reduce the number of people ensnarled in the criminal justice system substantially. Hardly anybody gets arrested for any kind of cannabis offense anymore, whereas tens of thousands of people got arrested every single year before that. So it had a major, major effect on the criminal justice system. But as for making it available to the public, it ain't so good. It's not working out so well. The problems is that, first of all, the taxes in it are extremely high. They got a 15% excise tax, which the legislature is supposed to increase to 19.3% in July, although there is a bill in the legislature to not allow it to happen. I don't know how that's going to go. But there's a 15% excise tax on top of the state sales tax, which is like 8.25%, on top of the sales taxes that municipalities impose. It could be anywhere from 1% to 3%. And then the municipalities impose their own excise tax on it. So it's not uncommon for cannabis to be taxed at 30% or more if you buy it on the legal market. And of course, this has had a drastic effect on the legal market, so much so that it's dwarfed by what?
I have a question about the taxes. Do you have clear information about what those taxes are supposed to be used for?
Yeah, actually, it's in Proposition 64. There are certain agencies, drug agencies, other agencies. I'm not exactly sure, but the money goes to these particular state agencies, and that's what the excise taxes go for, not the sales tax. The sales tax, goes from the general fund and all that kind of stuff. But the excise taxes go to these special agencies. And
I know that in Oregon, the taxes are supposed to go to drug treatment but
Right.
that didn't actually happen, and that's one of the reasons why I think it was in the last session of our legislature, the legalization of drugs was sort of rescinded. And
Well, the legalization of drugs was rescinded because people were people were. As I understand it, there's becoming kind of an open air drug market in Oregon because
that's what it looked like
you,
sometimes, but
you,
that
you
was supposed to be handled
yeah,
by
but
the beds in treatment facilities. That never happened. So I
yes,
mean,
right.
basically, they just legalized drugs, and that's why that happened. And I think that there are powerful people here in Oregon who wanted that measure to fail, so that they could illegalize drugs again, recreational drugs.
Right, absolutely true. Absolutely true. They were absolutely wanted it to fail. So anyway, the taxes are so high that 2/3 of the sales of cannabis in California are illegal because people don't want to pay 30% taxes on the product. The other problem has to do with the regulations and licensing of cannabis dispensaries. I have made presentations several times before cities and county boards that were going to uh, establish ordinances allowing cannabis businesses to operate. And when I did that, I usually said I congratulated them on saying, on doing. I said, thank you for allowing cannabis business to operate here. But frankly, I've read your ordinance for the operation, and it would be easier to open up a nuclear power plant in your city than to open up a dispensary. They're so convoluted and so complex, you have to hire a team of lawyers, and the expenses get to hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to open up a dispensary. And then another part the 64 allows is that municipalities are allowed to completely ban cannabis sales, cannabis businesses. And 2/3 of the state have done that. So 2/3 of the state of California are cannabis deserts. If you want to get cannabis legally, you're going to have to drive hundreds of miles to another county or in the city where it's legal. So, of course, most people buy illegally. So, what Proposition 64 has done, even though it has significantly reduced the criminality of it, it has empowered the black market, the illegal market, like it's never been empowered before, and it's just overwhelming, and it's made it impossible for legal cannabis businesses to compete. And there's 10,000 over 10,000 licensees that have gotten licensed have gone out of business. There's only about 8,000 cannabis businesses still operating in the state, and it's going to get worse and worse as if this isn't done. Isn't this
Lanny, can I
isn't
ask a question
reformed?
here?
Yeah.
Did Prop 64 do that, or did the failure to implement Prop 64 properly to do
No,
that?
no. Prop 64 specifically has the excise tax at 15%. It allows the cities and municipalities to ban. That's part of the state constitution. I was part of the unfortunate situation when we had a medical marijuana dispensary in the city of Riverside. We got sued by the city of Riverside like they were suing everybody, but our particular case is the one that went all the way to the Supreme Court. Our lawyers were saying that cities could not ban medical marijuana dispensaries as permitted under state law. They were saying that they could regulate them, they could put them in certain zones, but they can't ban them. Well, the state Supreme Court disagreed and said, yes, they can ban them totally. And that was incorporated in Proposition 64 as a way to get people to vote it and to try to muffle cities and counties, League of California Cities and stuff that would
Hey,
be opposed to it.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Oh, I
Uh,
understand.
but you said before on this program that Prop 64 allowed the legislature to amend it, and the legislature has not amended it.
Right. That's right. Legislature. And the thing is,
And once
there's
again, I go back to saying, was it just Prop 64 that did that? Or was it the failure to implement Prop 64 appropriately
Prop
to
64,
hold in the best interest the legal compliance
the
and to see that it was easier to be legal than it was to be illegal? You
no,
see, I'm contesting here that the state legislatures and the general populace are still opponents of allowing cannabis to be used.
the
They
the
they
this
but
proposition.
instead of being proactive anymore, as they used to have control over the laws. They're reactive. They're
No,
passive aggressive by
no,
resisting its
no,
implementation appropriately.
no, not at all. Prop 64, unlike most voter approved initiatives, allows the legislature to
And
make
they
amendments.
have they done so? That's my question.
Well,
Has the
that's
legislature
no.
amended it?
I was if before if you let me finish. There's been numbers of pieces of legislation introduced over the last 7 years to try to make things better. Unfortunately, it usually doesn't get anywhere. It doesn't get passed. So Proposition 64 remains pretty much like it is. Prop 64, and this is the point that we were trying to do at the California Democratic Convention. Prop 64, unlike almost all other voter approved initiatives, can be amended by a vote of the legislature. Most voter approved initiatives require a vote of the people. You got to put it on the ballot. And you got to do all the average costs, millions and millions and millions of dollars to amend any initiative, but not Prop 64. 64 can be amended by the vote of the legislature. So what we have done is we have created a, 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 a series of amendments to Prop 64 that will reduce the taxes. What essentially the bottom
Yes, I
line of
understand that. But
the
again,
bottom
what
line
you
of what
took to the CDP is a resolution. The CDP has no
no no
power
no
to
no no
affect the
no
law. The only connection is if you get individual legislators to comply with the resolution and create law out of it. That's
first
the
of
next
all
step.
first
The
of all the
question I have
resolution.
here is, did the CDP adopt any of your resolutions?
No, the CDP did not adopt the resolution because the resolution committee decided that this was a legislative matter and referred the resolution to the legislature, to the
Exactly.
legislation
Now,
committee. So
let
now,
me
now,
let me parenthetically, you said we were going to discuss this for 10 minutes, and in 10 minutes are up. The
well,
bottom
I know
line is,
because you're taking up the entire 10 minutes.
no, I want to know what was achieved. You see, and nothing was achieved because the CDP chooses to be powerless. They choose to do nothing. And this is what I'm saying. They are opposing the legalization of cannabis reactively and passive aggressively by
No, no,
not proposing appropriate resolutions of the problem.
no,
The
no, Sam.
CDP then becomes part of the problem rather
No,
than part of the
no,
solution.
no, 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 and no. The CDP, the resolution committee said this is a legislative matter and referred it to the legislation committee. I talked with the legislation committee after the referral, and they're going to be considering it at the August e-board meeting, considering the packet of amendments that we have submitted to Propositions for 64, and
Okay.
we believe that the CalDem will support amending Proposition 64. That's all we expect out of CalDem. We just want to get the stamp of approval of the California Democratic Party on amending 64. Once we get that, that gets our foot in the door talking with other
Okay.
legislators. Now, here's the thing. What we're doing is the bottom line of these amendments is to change the way cannabis is administered so it is more like alcohol than it is like depleted uranium. It's alcohol is taxed very low. Beer and wine is like at 1%. Hard liquor like Jack Daniels at 3%. And we want the excise tax on cannabis reduced from 15% to 3%, the same as hard liquor. And we want these regulations and all these kind of things simplified. And we've written amendments that will simplify the thing there. And we've also written an amendment that says that cannabis needs to be treated the same as alcohol on the local level regarding bans. Cities and counties cannot ban alcohol sales or manufacture in their municipalities. They can regulate the location, the zoning. They say you only can manufacture in certain zones, you can only have retail sales in certain zones, but they can't out and out ban it. And we want cannabis to be treated the same way. They can't out and out ban cannabis. They can regulate it just like they do alcohol. And furthermore, the cities will have put special excise taxes on cannabis. They cannot do that on alcohol. Cities have put 10, 15% excise taxes on cannabis. Cities cannot put an excise tax on alcohol. So we're trying to get cannabis treated the same as alcohol. And if that's successful, the price will plummet will plummet because the taxing will go from about 30% down to about 10%, because at that point, the only taxes that will be allowed will be the 8% sales tax, maybe a 1 or 2% cities tax, and the 3% excise tax.
Now
And
And you'll be able to buy a joint in a grocery store.
what?
And you'll be able to buy a joint in a grocery store.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. I have
if
to
it's
ask the people
regulated
who wrote
like
that.
alcohol, he's right.
Yeah,
If it's
I hope that would be right. You can go down to your 7-Eleven store in the corner and buy a joint. That is my ideal. That's
But
my ideal has always been is that if cannabis is truly legal, you'll be able to buy it at Costco. And that's really important. Why? Because if you buy it at Costco, you know it's going to be good quality, and you know it's going to be very reasonably priced. The only problem, if you're buying it at Costco, you'll have to buy a kilogram at a time. But anyway, but that's
but
basically
Lanny,
what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it treated like alcohol, and that's what this does. And so cities cannot ban it. If cities can't ban it, that means you'll have thousands and thousands of dispensaries all over the place. We believe, a lot of us believe, that the taxes, right now, 2/3 of all sales are illegal. The state, the local areas are not getting a dime of tax money. If the price goes down substantially and the legal dispensaries can compete financially with the illegal dispensaries, the state will actually make more money because it will start being able to obtain the sales tax on the sales of cannabis. And that way it'll make up for the money. Now, some of the agencies that are getting this money from the excise tax, the state excise tax, are not going to get it anymore. They're not going to get it. So they're going to be fighting this tooth and nail because they're going to lose out on it because the money is going to go into the general fund instead. But we're going to deal with that. We believe that we talked to a number of legislators. Fiona Ma spoke at our meeting, in fact, and she talked about the need to amend Proposition 64. So it's nothing out of the ordinary now. It is being contemplated. And we sent every single Democratic legislator the copy of the amendments that we want to put in 64. So it is in the process of being discussed. So our next step is the legislation committee at CalDem in August. Once we get that over that, then we're going to start forming coalitions with other groups, and we're going to start talking to legislatures and see if we can get a few legislators to do this. Now, it is a steep hill because it requires a 2/3 vote of the legislature to amend Prop 64. That's a steep hill. But, it's some people.
How much of an advantage, or what's the composition of the legislature in California? It's mostly Democrats, right?
If every
it's
Democrat votes
2/3
for it,
majority in both
if
houses.
every Democrat votes for it, we win. But even if some Democrats don't, we know there are Republicans that do support
Yeah, it can be done. But
this as well. So
there's
it
one
can
thing
be
you
done,
say,
but
Lanny, that I don't think you're correct on, and that is in terms of the price. I don't think the price will ever go down any lower than it already is.
I
That
do.
right now, illegal sales can compete with legal sales because they can adjust the price. They don't have to pay the taxes, but they're going to charge as much as they can, which means they won't charge more. I don't think they're going to charge more than what the dispensaries charge, but when the taxes are taken off, in the economy that we're in right now, prices are not going down on anything. So I don't think that the dispensaries will pay less taxes and they'll be able to survive. They'll be able to make a profit. They'll
the
be able to run a
the
business.
reason
But I don't think they're going to drop the prices
you
because
are
the economy is not friendly to dropping prices.
you are forgetting one important component of the process, and that is cultivation. Right now, the regulations on cultivation cannabis are absurd. They have strict limits on the amount you can grow, and the licensing is absurd.
But
Cannabis on
Lanny,
the whole.
we've all
Let
grown
me.
cannabis. We know how
No,
difficult it is.
no, it
I'd
is
much
not
rather go
difficult.
to a dispensary and just buy it when I need it.
Let me finish. If cannabis can be cultivated like any other agricultural crop without cumbersome regulations and all this kind of stuff, the price will plummet. Right now, the wholesale price of cannabis is about $1,000 a pound. That's the wholesale off the farm. What agricultural crop anywhere sells in its essentially raw state for $1,000 a pound. Nothing. And cannabis will be the same once farmers can grow hundreds and thousands of acres of it, like they grow corn and tomatoes and grapes. The price will plummet. It will be down to maybe $50 a pound, which is still an absurd price to pay for an agricultural product. So I believe that the price is not going to go down because of the dispensaries. The price is going to go down because the wholesale price is going to plummet from $1,000 a pound down to around $50 a pound. And still, $50 a pound, if farmers are making $50 a pound for growing cannabis, that's a good price. Remember, cannabis isn't hand trimmed anymore. You used to go all that hand trimming, all those people that do trimming. There are machines now. There are machines that trim cannabis very, very well. It's all automated. So if you can grow tomatoes in greenhouses where cannabis should be grown, in greenhouses, they grow these beautiful tomatoes. You see them in the store. They're selling in the store for $3 a pound. That means probably they're about $1.50 a pound to the farmer. But let's say cannabis, just for the sake of argument, is 10 times more difficult to grow than tomatoes. And if tomatoes are $3 a pound, that means cannabis will be selling for $30 a pound on the wholesale market.
I understand your theory, but and it's an appropriate theory. I mean, I heard Steve Covey make this argument in 1998. He wrote a whole book about regulating cannabis like wine. This is not a new argument. This is a 25-year-old argument or more.
Sure.
Um, and so I understand the theory. I just don't see that it's just in today's economy. You look at
Well,
everything else, especially with these damn tariffs that Trump
well,
is
of course.
placing. Prices are going up on
No,
everything.
no, 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 no. Trump is not putting any tariffs on American-grown cannabis. Now, if the cannabis is grown in China, there'll be a tariff on it. But if it's
That's not
grown
the
right
point. The
here,
point is prices are
it's right
going
here.
up. And,
Yeah,
and, and the
but this
basis
case,
of capitalism is greed, Lanny.
yeah,
And if
yes,
you can make more money, you'll raise prices. And
but the
that
thing,
goes for cannabis purveyors as
but
well.
the basis of cannabis is also called competition. And if you got all these farmers growing cannabis, the price will go down because the cost of growing
Theoretically, I
large amounts
understand.
is way less. Hey, Linda's on the line here. Linda, are you still on the line? Come on and join us. Okay, you come back in a minute. You let us know when you're back, okay? Anyway,
Okay.
So if anybody out here would like to see a copy of these amendments that we would like to introduce to Proposition 64, I'd like to see what we're talking about, send an email to me to RN Lanny. That's RN, licensed registered nurse, RN Lanny, LANNY, at AOL.com, and I will send you a copy of these amendments so you'll know what's going on. But
These
we're
are
really
what Dale wrote up, right?
This is what Dale wrote up. Right.
Yeah.
These are not cast in stone. We know there'll probably be some massaging and stuff going on, but boy, they really make some really good sense, and it's a real good starting point. And like so I was saying, is it likely that we're going to succeed? I don't know. Is it a shot in the dark? Yeah, it may be a shot in the dark, but even a shot in the dark every now and then hits the target. So we're going to keep working at it, and all I know is what's going on right now ain't working. Going to the legislature, trying not to get any tax increase it's so hard and so cumbersome that the only thing that's going to solve this problem is a wholesale. And we really believe that we can convince the legislatures. That one of the primary purposes of Proposition 64, where he always says, was to do away with the black market. But that isn't what happened. The illegal market has mushroomed under Proposition 64. But we can solve it. We can solve it by lowering the taxes, reducing the cumbersome regulations and licensing requirements, and banning in the states, in the areas of the state where they banned it, and allowing farmers to grow cannabis like they grow grapes. If they had to grow grapes like they grow cannabis, grapes would be selling for $500 a pound. So we're going to get it down there. Anyway,
Put me on that list too, Lenny.
What list? Oh, you want it? I'll send it to you.
Yeah, you got my email address.
I've got your email. I'll send it to you. All right. Let's talk about some other stuff here if we can. I wanted to talk about the big, beautiful bill that uh, President Orange, whatever is what was it? President Taco, whatever. At the convention, at some of the caucuses meeting, when you got up to speak, you had to say your name, and then you had to say what's your favorite taco. So
Great.
yeah, because Trump really has it. Here's something I got this thing I caught this thing on Facebook, and it's this is said if this is passed, it's about the big beautiful bill, and I don't know about these sections that are in it, but it's over 1,000 pages long, so I wouldn't be surprised. But here's what it said: if this passes, we won't have another election. To those of you who don't know what's buried in this big bogus bill, perhaps prepare yourself for what's coming. If the Senate passes the one big beautiful bill and Trump signs it, that's it. It becomes law, and here's what that really means. 1, he can delay or cancel elections legally. 2, he can ignore Supreme Court rulings for a year or more. 3, he can fire government workers for political disloyalty. 5, judges can't enforce their own orders. 6, protesters can be tracked and criminalized. LGBT rights, education, healthcare, and Medicare gutted. Your VPN tracked. Get that. You think you're not being your VPN tracked. You vote suppressed. Your speech flagged. This bill doesn't break the law, it recruits the law, so Trump never has to break it again. So, and here's something I read that was interesting.
Lanny,
Yes,
Lanny,
yes,
I watch the news all the time.
yes.
I haven't heard this at all. What's your source?
That's I don't know. That's it. As I said, I got this over the internet. I have no idea, and but
I
there
would
is one.
strongly doubt that that's true because I haven't heard people be screaming their head off about that. I'd be screaming my head off about that, but I
Well, I
doubt
know
that's true
people are
because I
scraping their
haven't
heads
heard a
off on
word about
YouTube.
it from even the farthest left sources. I'm very skeptical of what that says. Although, I'm not defending the bill, not at all. But
Well, here's
we have
one
to be
thing.
careful of our sources of information.
Here's
There's too
one.
many lies going on.
Well, here's one thing that's I looked up about one of the things here, and the part about how the judges can't enforce their own orders. It says here, Section 70302 reads, no court in the United States may use appropriated funds to enforce a contempt citation for failure to comply with an injunction or temporary restraining order. And what that means is like a lot of legislation, the bill language is opaque. But if Section 7302 were to become law, it would effectively upend the traditional balance of power system established in the Constitution. 70302 prohibits courts from charging a president with contempt for defying court orders, one of the main tools that has been used to rein in the current administration. In tandem with last July's stunning 6-3 Supreme Court ruling, which found that the presidents have absolute immunity for acts committed as a president, this bill would solidify the president's dictatorial reach because he can defy the courts. The court says you got to do this, and he can say, I ain't going to do it.
This
And
is all
it's
part
okay.
of Project 2025 with the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, yeah.
And their objective is to turn the President of the United States into the unitary executive, the guy who's in charge of everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that is unconstitutional.
Right. So that's
And some of the
one of
stuff
the
that you were talking
that's
about
one of the
when you
things
were
that was in this. That's one of the things that was in this sheet I read. Whether there's other things or no, I don't know. But at least one of the things I found in there is absolutely correct. They'll allow judges. The judges will not be able to enforce their own orders.
I'm seeing parts of this on YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube, and they're echoing what you're saying right now. I think that's actually real. You're reading from the bill.
That part about the court, the judges not being able to enforce their orders. Absolutely, I read that directly from the bill. Yes. So whether these other things are in there or not,
I'm reading it. I'm reading that section, and it makes it difficult. It doesn't prohibit, but it makes it very difficult for it does make it very difficult for judges to for any enforcement of an injunction.
And this is Linda.
Hi, Linda.
It doesn't matter. We can't enforce anything the courts are regulating now.
Yeah, she's right.
When they say that we're not able to enforce it because enforcement is the executive's role. They've got the DOD, they've got the FBI, they've got the CIA, they've got all the people who do the arresting. So unless those people stand up against the president, we can't enforce anything.
Right. There is no rule of law in the U.S. anymore. There's more rule of law in third world banana republics than there is in the United States now.
Well, at least currently. I was going to bring up...
We've become a banana republic. Go ahead, Linda.
I was going to bring up the subject of eliminating the Electoral College because there's a whole drive to do that. We have 209, electoral votes that will not use the college as a way to vote in. They'll do popular votes. We have a lot of states who are willing. It only adds up to 209. But my point is moot if this bill goes through. I don't know that it would matter. But if we can, in the midterm, without anything, if the bill doesn't go through, and in the midterm, if we could push, I think it's 61 more electoral votes, and that's about 4 blue states, and the rest are purple states. If we can encourage them to use popular vote as their criteria for electing someone to the general, then we will have what we need, which is a move to get more popular votes. Yeah.
I understand that. What it's doing, of course, is the states that sign on this say they will use their electoral college votes to vote for whoever won the popular vote for president. And you needed 271 electoral votes in order to do that. But
right, we're at 209 now.
Yeah, yes.
States that add up to 209. So we're meeting, the Democratic Greens are meeting on the 16th to try to find a way to find the people and the way to encourage other states to join this compact because California has joined it, and we have a lot of electoral votes. I don't know if New York is in it. I'm driving, so I can't read.
Okay, but it's one solution out there. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But it's an interesting idea, and if it picks up steams and gets 271 votes, it will make a difference. It will make a difference.
Oh, always, always.
Yeah.
I would like to share for follow up on what you've said, Lanny. A legitimate, verifiable source is the Huffington Post, and they have an article that says a showdown over the power of the courts is headed to the Senate. One Big Beautiful Bill Act has a provision buried halfway through its 1,000+ pages that would take away power from the courts. And it goes into this in great detail. So if anybody wants to verify what Lanny's saying, you can do so with this article in the Huffington Post, or you can just do what I did and Google section 70302 Big Beautiful Bill. And it does restrict the courts. I don't know about the elections, but another thing it says it does here, it prohibits states from regulating AI for 10 years. Now, AI can be used for all kinds of illegitimate purposes, lies about campaigns and such. And this bill will take away the power of the states to prevent that.
That's what makes me think, there was one thing in here that turned out to be true. That means maybe these other things are true too. It deserves checking. It deserves checking. So we'll have to wait and see. That's
and
it.
Trump has got this in the bill because he's had so many losses in federal court and injunctions against him that he's not going to comply with.
Yeah.
That's exactly the strategy. That's exactly what's going on.
Yeah. I'm curious about this delay or cancel elections. I'm going to do some research on that one. If
Yeah, I
that's
don't
any
see
good.
anything about that.
Yeah.
But it is, but AboveTheLaw.com says Trump's budget bill seeks to smother federal injunctions.
And I got this thing about your VPN tracked. How are they going to be able to track your VPN? That's going to be that'll be interesting, especially if your VPN is.
What the bill says to track VPN?
That's what it says. It says your VPN will be tracked under this bill. I don't know, or could be tracked. I don't know. We'll see.
Your internet provider, though, can see anything that goes through that goes to your computer.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I don't
No,
know how.
it's where your
You might.
computer's sourced from.
Yeah.
I know that. I tried to download Ocean's 8 one time. This is probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And Comcast contacted me and said, "This came through our servers. Do you know
Oh,
anything
really?
about it?" Yeah.
Ah, interesting. Here's an interesting thing. Joe Walsh, who was a Republican member of Congress, who ran against Trump in 2020, he has announced that he is becoming a Democrat, which marks the end of his 5-year streak as a political independent after leaving the GOP in 2020. It says Walsh announced his formal affiliation with Democrats in the Tuesday Subtract post, saying he made the decision because he views the Republican Party as a threat to democracy and the rule of law, and thinks defeating the GOP requires, quote, a broad coalition of moderates, progressives, and yes, even conservatives, end quote. So
I read about that earlier this week, too. Yeah. Just this morning, as a matter of fact.
yeah, he said here 3 words I never thought I'd ever utter. I'm a Democrat. This former Republican congressman, former Republican candidate for president, this former Tea Party champion is formally joining the Democratic Party. He says the stakes are simply too high to not become a Democrat.
Maybe we'll get some real leadership in the party then.
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of seeing Chuck and this guy who's chair. I don't even want to say his name. Who's the minority leaders in the Senate and the Congress are horrible. They need to be gone.
So,
We need real
so
people in there who have an agenda, who have a message. Because
You
the
know,
Democratic Party sucks from
at the,
D.C.
so
to San
my
Francisco.
my my question to you is, what do you think of David Hogg? He's
I don't
he's
know. I
shaking
don't know
things
that
up.
name. Who is David Hart? I'll
Oh,
look at
he's
him.
the young guy who's from Florida, who was elected in a key position in the Democratic Party.
Vice chair.
But
He's the vice
he's
chair.
young and he's against a lot of the traditional conservative-leaning Democratic candidates. And so
and
he's trying to get young people in, and he's making a lot of waves. And it's making, who's the guy that, Cromwell? No, what's his name? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm brain dead. There's a strategist, a Democratic strategist with a Southern accent from, I don't know, Louisiana or someplace,
Yeah.
that bitches about him all the time, but
Yeah.
that he's making waves
Cargill.
in the party.
Cargill.
at the convention, Cory Booker was one of the speakers.
He
And
was. He's
yes,
fantastic leader. He should be. He's so much
listen,
better than Chuck from New York.
Booker is tremendous. He had that crowd. He
He's
was gave a
always been one of
stem
my
winder.
favorites.
Yeah,
I had a
and
judge that I got to meet him at one of the Drug Policy Alliance conventions in Washington D.C. about 10 years ago. We
he
sat at
is
a table and talked drug policy reform for about
he
an hour or two. He's a
and he,
fantastic man. He's got tremendous ethics. He's got tremendous standards, and you know where he stands. He's not playing games like Mr. Chuckster from New
no.
York.
And I think he is definitely going to be one of the presidential contenders in 2028.
There
I
are some
support
excellent people
I
in the Democratic Party, but they're not in leadership positions, and I want to know why.
Well, we're trying to get him in leadership positions. Now, Linda just
That's what
indicated
Linda's talking about.
that this young man is now a vice chair of the Democratic Party.
Oh,
And
that's okay. I was looking up, trying to look him up,
They want to
and
kick
that's a
him out,
common name.
though.
David Hogg.
They're talking about kicking him out.
Hogg.
Yeah, David Hogg. They're
H-O-G-G.
they're not happy with him at
Spell
all.
his last name, please.
H-O-G-G.
Oh.
Yeah. And and
H
and
O
the question is that
Hodge.
the concern is that he shouldn't run Democrats against Democrats.
Oh,
Well, in the primary, that's okay. It's the general that you've got to suck it up and take whatever you get.
oh, yeah, he's the one who said he wanted to primary some of the older Democrats. Hey,
and
I'm
for
all
Yeah.
good
for
reason.
that. I'm an old white man, and I think we need to get rid of all these old white men. They're too sleepy. They're too old. God, why did they lie to
Well,
us about
it's less
Biden
race and
being
gender. It's approach.
inadequate to do the job?
It's less race and less gender and less age, and just look at the approach. Look at what people stand for. They don't just say what's wrong, but they say what they will do to make it right. That's what I'm looking for. And we
Well,
have a lot of candidates, a lot of people vying to be candidates who are really good at telling you what all of the wrong things are. But I never hear them say what they would do to make a difference.
Well, you don't get as
I
high as
agree,
being
Libby.
vice chair of the national committee without having quite a bit of support behind you. And I don't think he did this with by having a secret agenda. I'd like to know, but I would expect that he became vice chair because there's enough people who support his ideas,
Yeah,
and I would.
yeah.
They sound like really good ideas.
well, we got those of us who are active in the party. We've got to make sure that more people like this David Hogg and so on get into positions of power. And that's what we had elections at the Cal Dem.
He's from
Uh,
California. Why did you say he's in Florida?
Oh, well, he's from Florida. He's the National Democratic Party, not the California one.
No, I didn't say California Democratic Party. He lived in Los Angeles. His father was an FBI agent, and his mother, born in San Diego County, is a teacher. But they're in
Oh,
Florida now. Yeah, you're right.
yeah, and what he was one of the key people during uh, the crisis in the high school that where
Right. He came
people
out of
got shot.
the Parkland High School shooting.
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah,
remember him now. Okay.
yeah,
well,
yeah.
I'm
There was a young girl there too who was pretty powerful. I don't know what happened to her,
Well, the
but
Riverside County Democratic Party is, I have been with that party since 2012, and I have never seen such a high percentage of young people involved in the party as we have now. And they are in positions of power within the RCDP. Um, I'm just hoping that we're going to see this going throughout the state. And see, at the convention, I saw a lot of young people there, and some of the people that were like, now I'm not thrilled about the chair. I think the chair is too old line. But a lot of the younger people, Diane Love, for example, who's the secretary, some very progressive voices have taken are running the California Democratic Party. And I know these people, and they are very supportive of getting the old boys out and getting new voices in. They're the AOAC side. If they're going to be old, they got to be like Bernie Sanders, but they want more like AOC.
yeah, yeah. They're the ones that are getting people motivated. You don't see people like I don't know, even Adam Schiff getting gatherings together. You don't see people getting out there
Well,
except Bernie Sanders and AOC,
well,
maybe Jasmine Crockett once in a while, or I don't know.
Well, as I understand it, Democrats are holding a lot of these. They're doing in these Republican districts where the assembly not assembly members, the state senators, not the state senators, the U.S. senators and the Congress people don't hold these public
Town
forums
hall,
anymore. The
yeah,
Democrats are holding these public forums, and where people can come out and actually speak out. And it doesn't look good for the Republicans not to get out there and hold these public forums like they used to. But they can't, because when they do, they're just inundated by all these people criticizing all the horrible things that the Republicans are doing in Congress. So there we go.
Well, Lanny, I'm going to need to get a list of all the special elections that are happening for senators and representatives who are leaving for whatever reason and they need to be replaced. And there are some special elections out there. I'll get that information to you, so we'll vote them in. Maybe between now and 26, we'll be able to get a few more Democrats in the House, maybe one or two in the Senate.
Yeah, well, all we need to do is get 3 more senators and actually 4 more assembly members, and the Democrats take control of the Congress again.
Yeah.
It's that close. And of course, a lot of it's going to be what happens over the next 12 months with this economy that Trump is just destroying. And we'll have to see what happens. I think people are going to, when the Medicare thing, this bill, this big, beautiful bill, slashes Medicare. It really does. They're expecting over 8 million people to lose their Medicare under this bill. And they're trying to put in these work requirements for all these, everything from food stamps on down. Work requirements, they're horrid. The paperwork that you have to file every week about it is just unbelievable. And so this is what they're trying to do. And I think a lot of people are going to get very, 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 very upset. And we're having problems with this immigration thing. We're beginning to see the shortages in key industries where people can't get enough workers that the immigrants used to fill. People are going to start seeing within about 3 to 4 months, people are going to start feeling the impact of the Trump's tariffs, the Trump's immigration policies, and they're not going to like what they see. They talk about all these things, how bad immigration is, but people don't know. They don't know the upside to it, and they're going to find out the downside of not having immigrants coming to this country.
Right.
They generate how much money do immigrants working in this country that paying Social Security and all that money is going into the Social Security fund, the Medicare fund, and they're never going to see a dime of it because they're not a citizen. But their money is going into helping prop up the Social Security and the Medicare. So people are going to find out. Yeah.
What burns me is that everybody's talking about spending and cutting. The word military never comes up.
Oh yeah.
And the Democrats are equally at fault as the Republicans. We don't need the military budget we've got. We have the military budget, and that's why all the other countries throughout the world that we support don't have military budgets. So they feed their people, they house their people, they provide Medicare for their people. And it's because we spend our money on military and they don't. And when are they going to cut that? It hasn't been cut since World War II.
If you're looking for fraud, waste, and abuse and not looking at the military budget, that's insane.
Yeah.
The military budget has never passed an audit.
Even the generals say what you're saying. They echo exactly what you're saying.
Have you looked what's happening in Europe right now? All those countries are kicking up their military budget because of what's happening in Ukraine with Russia.
Because Trump's not going to support Ukraine.
Yeah. So they're kicking in. And of course, what's going on in Ukraine? I'm sure you all read about this drone attack that they did, where they wiped out a third of Russia's big fighter jets and this kind of stuff, and they just blew up this big bridge and everything all of a sudden.
Nice coup.
Nice coup. Yeah.
So, but you don't hear any Democrat, any Republican, you don't hear anybody in elected federal office talk about cuts to the military budget.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And yet, you can go back to Eisenhower and his warning about the military industrial complex. That's what we've got. Exactly what Eisenhower warned against, the military industrial complex, because they take control.
And that's what Kennedy was going to turn around 3 days before he was assassinated, and that's why he was assassinated.
That is so. I've often wondered about that, because he was also talking about pulling out of Vietnam,
That's
And
what they was going to turn it around. Truman
yeah,
and Eisenhower hated each other, but they both advised Kennedy of the same thing about the military-industrial establishment, and that's why Kennedy was going to turn it around, and that's why he
yeah,
was assassinated. And
yeah,
it's
Have you
never
guys
been turned around since.
have you
Johnson
guys read
reversed his policies the very day after he was assassinated.
yeah.
have you guys read that speech that includes that whole clause about the military industrial complex? Please do look it up on the internet. That is like
Speech by whom?
paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of really inspiring things.
What speech by
Eis-
whom?
Eisenhower's speech where he talked about military.
Eisenhower speech,
I'll have to
Yeah,
look at
yeah,
1961.
that.
okay.
I take a look at it.
The
You
whole
know,
speech
I
is
mean,
great.
Eisenhower. I'm sure Eisenhower would be totally upset with the Republican Party nowadays.
Absolutely,
Absolutely,
absolutely.
yeah, you're
Well,
right.
so would Reagan.
So you're right.
George W. Bush is.
Yeah, you're right.
Bush
You're right.
Jr. is.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Every legitimate Republican is upset.
Like Joe
Could
Walsh.
be.
Like Joe Walsh, yeah.
Hey, listen, we've only got about 2 minutes left. So does anybody have any 1 minute thing they want to say before
I
we
do.
sign off? Go ahead, Gregory.
I do. My podcast on YouTube is called The View from Out Here, and we're talking about a bunch of this stuff there as well.
Okay. Linda, do you have anything you want to final words for today's show? I think Linda gave her final words and left the show a little while ago.
Oh
I'll
no!
tell you this.
Well, I'm
Wait,
no.
go ahead, Linda.
Go
I
ahead.
have no final words.
No final words. Okay.
There are
I have
countries
no
all over the
final
world that are
words.
putting new visa limits on United States citizens. And notice I didn't say American, United States citizens. United States citizens are finding it harder and harder to travel anywhere else out all over the world. And you have Trump to thank for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You sure do.
I got out when when the outing was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, is it,
You know, Trump's wall isn't just going to keep people out. It's going to keep all of you in too.
true? I don't know. Victor and I have been talking about maybe going back up to Canada where he's and live with his tribal reservation. But I don't know. Maybe they won't let me out. Victor, you know what's interesting? There's a thing called the Jay Treaty, which was put in the 18 something or other, which allows Native Americans to travel back and forth between the
playing
countries
us off.
where they want. Hey, there's the
Bye.
music. That's
Okay.
it. Thank you for joining us
Thank
tonight
you.
on Lanny Sense,
Bye.
on the radio station that leaves no listener behind, for the radio show that leaves no gender behind. Good night.